I find that when you go through a book and you're a reader and you're sitting down and you've got just an amazing set of exercises in front of you and you're asking those questions, there's so much that can be discovered, whether it's a book or it's coaching or it's a course. What would somebody take away by going through your book and going through and discovering those things for themselves?
Yeah, look, I think an organization can only do a few things really well. I think people can only do a few things really well. As we started this conversation, what are you individually in pursuit of? What is your North Star personally? What is an organization's North Star? And I love to talk about this when it's overstated, but what's happiness to you, right? People think happiness is a big house, big car and a big title. But happiness to me is even having this conversation with you, like what sets your soul on fire? What gets you up in the morning? We talked about your love and my love of the beach, right? My love of the mountains, your love of the mountains. So how do you define happiness? And I think what happens to a lot of folks in life, whether they're young, in the middle of their life, or towards the end of their life, they've lost their mojo because they haven't really gone after what defines happiness for them. They haven't set that expectation. So I think if you take anything away from the summit mindset, this is not a dress rehearsal, right? We got to do what really sets our soul on fire, what we love to do. And I think what happens to folks, we kind of conform to life and we kind of conform of where we are. And I just want to encourage people to have courage, right? Be bold, do what you believe makes you happy and have courage. I think it's really important. I think we have to get outside of our comfort zone. And I think my victories in life have come through struggle. The winner's circle, the work's done. It's really the climb.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more powerful than discovering who you are, what you're the best at, what you're not good at, what life's really about. And for me, that journey, that path came after a lot of struggle, a lot of hardship, a lot of difficult times. And I found myself, I got into this mindset, this mentality of more. I kept growing the business. I kept needing to have more. There was never enough, wasn't celebrating those victories. And then we all had the gift of COVID. Some people didn't look at it like that, but I ended up selling my house. I went out to Hawaii and I was staying at this 9-acre estate. It actually was built by the Beach Boys, beautiful home. And the owner of that building was a man who had retired. He was a home builder back in the East. And he saw that drive, that never ending, never enough mentality. And he asked me a question. He asked me, what's your number? At what point will it be enough? At what point will you say, you've made it and you can enjoy the path? And that really, it really stuck with me. It really made me sit down and think, well, what is enough? And so what I'm curious for you is what comes up when I ask that question, what is your number? What point you've made it? Not even the number itself, unless you're comfortable sharing that target that you have, but what comes up when you think about that question?
Well, I love the question. I'll share with you a little bit. This summer, I had a very tragic experience of adversity where I had someone who had been my driver for a long time and, passed away while driving with me with a heart attack. And that moment, as I sat on the curb and I thought about, how is my life? If I didn't make it today, how would I be? And I believe as I reflect on that, I'm at the point in my life where I've achieved enough. I know who I am as a human being. I know that what makes me happy. And I'm really comfortable in my skin for all my imperfections and all my good qualities. So I think for me, I've always loved building companies. I love employing people. I love being a teammate. I've always wanted to build $1 billion business, and I'm on that path now as I'm building something new again. So for me, enough is about being in pursuit. And that pursuit's being a good dad. My kids are grown now, being a good husband, a good human, and continuing to build companies and to be in pursuit and have purpose. So as I reflected this summer on that terrible tragedy, I felt my life is enough because it's purpose-driven. And I never want to stop being purpose-driven. I want to be 90 and be purpose-driven. As long as I have my mind, I want to be purpose-driven. Because only for me, that's what really sets my soul on fire. That's how I'm wired, right? So Yeah, that's the way I would answer that. And I think as you reflect on whatever adversity you've been through, Stephen, in those times, what we learn, and then we kind of like say, okay, how do we reset the path? Is something missing? How do what's our enough? What's missing? And I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm doing the things I love and I don't find anything's missing, but I want to keep evolving.
Yeah. Every time I get to that point where I feel like something's not right, I used to just push through it. I used to just fight through it. And I've been learning to flow through it instead, finding that path towards what's easy, not necessarily going away from the hard thing, but what's that easier path towards allowing and attracting those things in. Because one of the biggest challenges that I've faced was a death similar to yours. My younger sister passed away in a car accident unexpectedly. And I had the gift of spending 2 weeks with her before. And, but that whole time I was working on a summit. I had 800 people before COVID on a summit, and we were launching these things. And I was excited about all those things. Then all of a sudden, in a moment, the thing that you never think happens to you, the thing you see on the news, it's right in front of you. And all of a sudden, all those business things didn't matter.
Right.
And all of a sudden you realize that maybe this conversation we have is our last conversation.
Right.
And we want to enjoy it. We want to connect, that there's something more meaningful. And so for me, that's been a really powerful realignment moment to be able to come back to that, because everybody's dealing with something at some point. And we don't have to rate how much worse it is or better it is than what we've experienced. But as long as we're going out there, we have a purpose, we're trying to make an impact, we're trying to create a great life, and we're enjoying the process along the way. I couldn't think of a better way to live. Yeah,
I'm so sorry to hear about your sister. And I agree with you. I think that what I've learned through time is life is as delicate as a blink of an eye. And if we kind of, in those moments, are reflecting and learning and asking ourselves, who are we and what do we want to contribute and how do we want to live? That's the best way to live, right? And we learn that not through the 800 people on the summit from the businesses. We learn that in the valley, right? We learn that same in Forged by Fire. And you can't sleepwalk through those times. You have to be reflective through those times. So I think that's really important. And I think there's a lot of that in the Summit Mindset, the book. And like you said, we're all going through something. It's how we kind of evolve through it. And, the last thing I'll say is it's part of living, right? And I think sometimes we forget that, like, we want the lottery, we want things to be perfect, but living's not perfect, man. And, it happens to all of us. So if you understand that, it's just evolving through it.
It's actually, I think, the biggest challenge that we're facing as a society today is that a lot of people, they've been trained and taught pleasure, immediate gratification, and we're doing everything we can to not experience pain. But sometimes that pain is exactly what we need to experience, because that's where we really discover who we are and the greatness that's there, and motivates us to go and do something bigger and better and greater in the world for other people, for ourselves, for our families. And so if anything, I think it's, go towards it, right? Like lean into it.
Yeah. You have to endure it. You have to learn through it. And I haven't met anyone who's really interesting as a person who hasn't endured and leaned into that and been through that adversity. And look, you and I both in our life, Stephen, will go through more pain, and we'll hopefully along that journey understand how to lean into it more, because we've been there before and we didn't sleepwalk through it. We were awake, we were learning and asking ourselves, hey, is this how we want to live? Are we doing enough? And to me, I will say that I think that we should all be stewards of giving back and serving people. And I don't mean that has to be grandiose. I mean, it's holding the door open, right? It's talking to your neighbor. It's the little things and it's the big things. And, those things are fulfilling. And I think through adversity, you're always recalibrating, because like yourself, I'm a hard charging guy, and, I like to work out. I like to run. I like to build businesses. But what's really important, right? That's why the Summit Mindset was important to me. Writing that book was important. I wanted to put my thoughts onto paper. I wanted to talk about some adversity, and I wanted to talk about the human side of life. And I think that can be talked about in organizations to an extent as well. I think vulnerability as leaders can be a strength.
Thanks for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to watch another, here's one up top. And here's another great video right down below.